Sorry about that. Good evening. This is Charles with the Exodus Logistics Learning Center. Um, it is Friday, October 11th, 2024. This is our Friday edition of our freight broker um, training for beginners. Yes, it says please talk about the port tonight. Um, as you know, there was a 3-day strike, temporary, but it still congested the ports, right? There's going to be a backlog, which can be advantageous for brokers and carriers to get that freight that was backlogged out to the customers, right? The purpose of the strike was between the ILA, which is the International Longshoremen's Association, and the USMX, the United States Maritime Alliance, right? The ILA are unionized longshoremen workers. They were not satisfied with their pay, right? And they wanted to not have automation uh, increase what's already there because it'll force, them to lose their jobs, right? Because automation, I can't pay my bills if I'm not working. And with the ports, a lot of freight, a lot of shipments come into the country through the ports. Let me go to an email that I had received from there's a publication that I subscribe to, and I recommended you guys to subscribe to this publication, um, Supply Chain, I think it's Supply Chain Dive. What's up, Nola? So let me see here. So they said the US lost $5 billion a day. I'm not sure of that number. If that's true, that's the only word I got to say for that is wow. That's a lot of money. So um, how can we as uh, freight brokers prepare for this or use it to or as an advantage also? So let me go in here and show you. So in the right here, supply chain dive, it says the ILA strike leaves lengthy backlog. What does that mean? There's a backlog of containers and ships that need to come into the country and get that freight delivered, right? So right here, the strike is over, but what should shippers prioritize now, right? Because there's a backlog. While the strike was short-lived, 3 days, it could take weeks to clear cargo backlogs and bring ports back to normal operations. Well, that's a good thing for the brokers and the carriers because now it's forcing them to get this freight delivered quicker. So that's going to increase the rates. The shipper's going to say, okay, we'll pay uh, more money to get this stuff out quick so that we can get things back to what's considered normal. You see? So the backlog could be a kind of a blessing in disguise from the broker and the trucker's perspective because it has to get delivered, right? It has to get delivered. So right here, let's open this article up and see. And I can copy this article and put it in the chat for you guys to read it, right? So, but that's there, right? So, trucking contract rates rise ahead of peak season. So we're not in peak season yet, which is the holidays. But the key measure or the key indicators now uh, is the strike and the backlog, right? So let's see right here. I'm gonna copy this and put it in the chat for you guys to have here. There. So does everybody get that in the chat? You see the chat that I just pasted that link to the article? So what they're saying is there is a how do shippers prioritize getting their particular freight to clear this backlog up, getting their freight out and back, and how advantageous would that be to the brokers as well as the carriers? And as it relates to the rates, are the rates going to go up? What do you guys think? As a broker, from a broker's perspective, with this backlog of cargo on these containers, do you think this is going to have an adverse effect on you as a brokerage? Or and the carriers indirectly and you directly, or is it going to have a regular effect on you as a brokerage? What are your thoughts on that?
Hmm.
Chirac, what do you think? Who's that? iPad? Somebody unmuted themselves.
What's going on, Charles? It's Damien. Y'all doing all right tonight?
Hey, how you doing, Damien?
hmm I mean, I think it could be advantageous for a broker or carrier. Um, Usually, that's just how the logistics side of moving freight is when things get backlogged
Right.
and they want to try to get it out. So it's kind of like an influx of volume.
There you go.
So yeah, and it kind of increases. You have to kind of supplement a lot of different things, especially with the cost of fuel. All that's factored into the shipping rates and all of that. So I mean, I just think it's a good opportunity to kind of get in the broker space as well as the carrier space.
Right. So right here it says the International Longshoremen's Association. That's the group of longshoremen, the actual workers who handle the containers, getting them off the ships and stuff. They are unionized. It's like 85,000, I think of them. They're unionized. So the International Longshoremen's Association strike may have ended 3 days, right? But shippers, the customers, are still facing cargo backlogs and freight constraints because there was, even during those simple 3 days, there was a build up of freight because the containers were just out there on off the coast of the waters waiting to come in, and it was a gradual buildup even in 3 days. So imagine if it was longer, how much more constraints and backlog there would have been, right? And how much more further it would have affected the rates, right? So after a 3 day strike disrupted East and Gulf Coast port operations last week, the ILA and the USMX, which is the United States Maritime Alliance, reached a tentative wage deal, right? And agreed to extend their master contract, the current one they're under now. So the master contract was a 6 year contract, and it was set to expire September 30th of this year. And if they didn't come up with something, they would have went on strike, and that's exactly what they did. September 30th, they didn't come up with an agreement, so they took a strike. It lasted 3 days. They came to a consensus. Let's say let's just extend our master contract from September 30th now up until January 15th. Right here, they're extending the master contract to 2025, and by then we should have some kind of something figured out between us. The union and the United States Maritime Alliance is a group of those shipping container carriers, the large shipping container carriers like the Maersk, the OOCL, the big boys, right? So um they are doing that. So the extension gives both parties time to negotiate pending issues. So what are the pending issues? The pending issues are obviously with negotiating more money. The longshoremen want more money because they're making like what, $20 an hour, maybe 20, $25 an hour. They want to make more money. And then the automation piece. They don't want their jobs to be automated because if they do, then they lose the human element, right? They will no longer be needed. They'll be obsolete. They'll be replaced by automation or robotics, right? And they don't want that. They want to work to earn the money. Okay. But if a master contract is not renewed by then, the union can go on strike again. So by January 15, 2025, which is an extension from the September 30th master contract, if they can't figure out something then a second time, they may strike again. And it may be more than 3 days. You see how it affected 3 days. Me and my wife went shopping in the store for some household goods like toilet paper stuff, and the shelves were bare, right? It was almost like if it was COVID-19, they clearing all the shelves and everything. So it was the same thing. We're like, wait in the world, what's going on? It's just a 3 day strike. But people were panicking, right? Because they think that there was going to be a short supply of those goods. So they decided they wanted to stock up on them and kind of, get ahead of the strike, right? Fortunately, it was only 3 days, right? From a freight broker's perspective, this is like Damien said, this is advantageous because it's going to affect the way shippers are want to having their products brought to their stores or to their customers' locations by trucks from the ports. They're going to pay more because there is a backlog, there is congestion at that point, the ports. So all this stuff has to get to its destination, the shipper's destination. So they're willing to pay more to do that. So the rates are going to go up as far as the load tenders that the shipper gives to you, the brokers, and as far as what you can pay more to the carriers, and then indirectly your profit margin as a broker. You're going to, so everything goes up in proportion to this backlog or to this congestion of freight, right? Freight constraints. So it can conceivably have a positive effect on you guys, right? So your goal is, as a broker, if you talk to shippers who have a need to get out of that squeeze, you can stress even more that you can be an asset to them by providing trucks and service that you can get their freight to them in a timely fashion to ease their congestion restraints or congestion worries, right? That'll be your job as a freight broker. Now you can leverage this now, in addition to other things you was possibly thinking about leveraging when you're talking to shippers to kind of get freight from them as a broker. So this is just another chink in the armor. You see. So shippers, however, are still dealing with lingering impacts from some of the terminal closures that took place during the work stoppage. So what do we mean by the terminal closures? These are the ports, different ports, from Maine all the way down to Manatee or Miami, Port of Miami. So you got New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Virginia, uh, uh, Charlotte, North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, and then Wilmington, Delaware. Um, what else? Savannah, Charleston, Jacksonville, Port of Miami, Port of Manatee, all these different ports on the East Coast. And then along the Gulf, the southern part of the country, by New Orleans, down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Houston, Bayport, and the other one I forget down there by the Houston area. So down there in that area. So it's the Eastern Seaboard and the Gulf ports. Not so much the West Coast, but the East Coast and the Gulf, right? This is what shippers are concerned with. So as a freight broker, it's great to have the knowledge in order to leverage that information to use it effectively for your brokerage. Okay. Um, it will likely take most of October to get port operations back to normal due to backlog of cargo and vessels caused by the strike. This person says Vespucci Maritime Partner and CEO Lars Jensen wrote in an article, right? So basically the rest of this month. So they're saying they're projecting that from now, October 11th, through the end of the month, which is another 3 weeks, um, or another 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, um, they're projecting that it'll take that amount of time to clear up the congestion and get it back to normal operations where ships come in on a regular normal basis as opposed to a backlog, right? I disagree, but that's what they're projecting. Okay. This will also create some ripples, whereby we will see a temporary decline in capacity offered from Europe to North America. In other words, what they're saying is, while we're congested here in the US and we're clearing that up, they're telling Europe, hey, don't send any more ships now until we get this cleared up. That's what that means. There's going to be a decline in capacity, meaning there's hardly any ships coming out of Europe to the US because we got enough ships over here now with this congestion, and we got to clear these up first before you bring some more over. Because what's the point of doing that? You're just going to add to the congestion. Does that make sense? There's no point in keeping ships coming from Europe when we got enough over here now that we got to clear up, get back to our normal process. That makes sense, right? It's like being in a traffic jam, right? You're in a traffic jam. There's an accident, and they're trying to clear the accident down about a quarter mile away, but you got more cars getting on the exit ramp into that same lane where the accident is at. Doesn't make sense. They should be redirected somewhere else. So it's the same concept with the ships. Don't come from Europe until we get the congestion cleared up. Okay. Um, before the union went on strike, some shippers diverted cargo to the West Coast, which is crazy. and front-loaded goods to mitigate any potential impact to their supply chain operations. That that's going to take longer. So some shippers, to avoid the strike because they knew it was coming October 1st, they diverted their East Coast shipments to the West Coast. So they went either took it on a ship down to the southern part of eastern seaboard, southern part of the country, under and then through the Panama Canal and then back up into the West Coast, which took an extra week and a half, 2 weeks, right? So it slowed down their delivery times, right? But that's the only alternative they had. They could have air freighted it, but that would have been more expensive. Air cargo is more expensive than bringing cargo in on the vessel. The reason why the vessels are cheaper than the air freight is because it's it's slower. It takes longer to get there because it's on a vessel, it's on a ship, and it's going over the ocean to the country. Air freight is coming right over quicker. That's why they can charge more for that service, that service to get there faster. But to divert your shipping operations to the East Coast, down through the Gulf, the Panama Canal, and then up to the West Coast was a pretty desperate alternative, right? So that's where we are with the ports and the congestions and things like that. Any questions and comments about that?
No,
Hmm?
no, it's pretty straightforward.
Very much so. Very much so. So now, Tuesday we talked about. I'm just going to continue on. I was going to talk about the packet types. I was going to get into this tonight because I'm going to hold you for about an hour, guys. I'm not going to be here too long with you guys. I'm just hold you for an hour. Um, So the as it relates to you guys, the freight brokers, just getting started, let's say you're just getting started, you signed up with the FMCSA to get your operating authority, um, and you filled out the OP1 online, right? You pay the $300 non-refundable fee to become a freight broker, right? Next thing you do, you need a bond, right? You need a bond, a $75,000 bond coverage. What's the purpose of the bond? What is the purpose of the bond? Can anyone answer that question for me? What's the purpose of a broker having a bond and the bond being in an amount of $75,000? Someone tell me that.
It's really for to protect the carrier
Okay.
when the breakdown occurs. Yeah, Sky just put it to cover unpaid claims. If the broker doesn't make good on the agreement with the carrier can file to get that money against the broker's bond.
Correct. So the
Yeah,
bond protects the carrier because you may have a broker who behaves illegally, unethically, or just plain wrong, right? So and they may breach the contract between them and the carrier, right? So let's say broker doesn't have a factoring company, carrier doesn't have a factoring company, but the broker's net terms is a net 15 or net 30 or whatever days. Even though most carriers cannot wait that long to be paid, they'd rather be paid up front through either the broker's quick pay options through their factoring company or what have you. But let's say for whatever reason in the contract, the broker did not pay the carrier according to the terms of the contract, whether it was factored or not. That is a breach of contract, and the carrier has every recourse then to go after the bond of the broker to recoup the money or get the money that's due to them for their service of transporting the broker's goods on behalf of the broker's customer, the shippers, to the broker's customer's customer, the receiver, right? So the bond protects the carrier. Okay, so next then, as you get your broker authority, you're going to need an agent of process. So that comes along with the bond. The agent of process is a company or organization that presents that serves that claim filing by the carrier to the broker. You've been served, right? An agent of process. So um, that's a requirement from a broker. and then the UCR, a Uniform Carrier Registration. Whether you are an asset-based or a non-asset-based broker, right? In other words, you have trucks under your brokerage or a separate trucking company, what have you, then yes. So after all of these requirements are met and your broker authority or your broker license becomes active, you are official, right? Then you can, or during that process, you could be thinking about creating your paperwork or your documents to contract with your two parties that you're going to be dealing with for the most part. So brokers take on two different entities when they are brokering. They take on the customers, the shippers, and they deal with the motor carriers that are going to be under their authority, or if they're asset based with them, right? So those are the two parties. So with that being said, um, we have different packet types for with two, mainly two, for as it relates to a broker. So a when the broker is dealing with the shipper, that broker shipper packet. And when the broker is dealing with the carrier, there is a broker carrier packet. And each packet contains some documents that are minimally required in order to make it a good packet. So, for example, on the shipper side, within the broker shipper packet, the first document should be the contract, which is called the broker shipper agreement, right? Now, here are our templates. We have several templates, but here's one of them. The broker shipper agreement is the contract that you and the shipper come to terms with as to what your roles are going to be. The shipper tenders or gives loads to you, cargo shipments to you to move or transport, and you agree to do so according to their requirements, right? And they tender that to you, either one shipment or multiple shipments, depending on your level of experience and what you can or cannot do or what you're qualified to do, right? Um, and you agree with that. The shipper tells you their responsibilities, and they expect you to have your responsibilities in play. What's your role in that transportation of the freight, or in the arranging of the transportation of freight? And because that's the definition of a broker, someone who arranges for the transportation of freight by procuring it from the shipper and selling it to the carrier, right? So in the broker shipper packet, the first document in the packet is the contract, the broker shipper agreement. And here's what it looks like. It should cover you want to one of the things you want to cover is accessorials. An accessorial is something that's due, a payment that's due to the carrier for something that the carrier did not cause, but they're still due to be paid for. Like, for example, if you are a freight broker and you gave a load or you booked a load with a trucking company, a carrier, owner, operator to pick up at a facility for your customer, the shipper, and it took the shipping facility longer than normal and in the contract to load or unload that, if a shipper to load that trailer. Um, that is called detention, right? So in the broker carrier agreement or the rate confirmation, it should have said for detention, it should have said like we offer detention free after 2 or 3. That means hours, right? So the carrier gives either 2 or 3 hours for free during the loading process at the shipper or the unloading process at the receiver. And anything after that, the broker needs to go to the shipper in order to get accessorial monies for detention to pay the carrier on an hourly basis. And that's determined between the broker and the shipper when they first get set up. What is that hourly rate? Is it $50 an hour? Is it $100 an hour? Is it 150? Whatever that number is, right? Let's just go with the $100 an hour just for this example. Um, and so that accessorial policy should be, or any other accessorial policy should be in the explained and identified in the broker shipper agreement, the contract, so that all parties understand what that is. They may say, well, we have an accessorial policy that relates to detention, TONU, which is truck ordered, not used, lumper, you know, things like that. Lumper is when the carrier is charged or can get reimbursed for paying for their trailer being loaded with the freight or being unloaded with the freight at the receiver. Tonu, truck ordered, not used. You may, as a broker a shipment to your carrier. The carrier is on the way to the shipper to pick it up. Shipper calls you, the broker say, hey, that load got canceled. Our customer said they don't need it until next week. Well, your carrier is already on their way to the location. They're driving there right now. They're like halfway there. So now you got to call the carrier and like, hey, that load got canceled to next week. Well, the carrier is going to ask, particularly if there is an accessorial in the carrier agreement, the broker carrier agreement, if there's an accessorial for Tonu, they're going to ask for that. So they at least cover the fuel for driving, wasting their time in driving, right? So TONU, Tonu, truck ordered, not used. That's what it stands for, the acronym. Okay. Um, so those again, those are now, there are plenty of accessorial policies that may or may not be in the broker shipper agreement. The point here is to be aware of some of those when you are dealing with customers and you're trying to get set up with a customer as a broker. You want to ask them, that's one of the things you ask them. If you're quoting a lane for them or you're doing anything for them that you're trying to win their service or win their business and you're serving them, ask them about what is their policy dealing with accessorials as it relates to detention, layover, tonu, lumper. Those are the four common ones. And then there are others, but you want to cover at least the basics, right? Especially with certain equipment types like dry vans, the flatbeds, and the reefers, right? Those those three equipment types, at some point or another, in some way, shape, or form, will come across one of those four common accessorial types: tonu, layover, lumper, and detention. Okay, at some point. So, so that's the broker shipper agreement, one of the um, documents in the broker shipper packet. Okay, another. Well, and before I move on, is there any question about the broker shipper document that's in the broker shipper packet?
I want to touch on the bond part of it, Charles. Do you
Okay.
have any bond companies that you highly recommend that you've dealt with, or what I'm saying, just from people coming to you and talking about their reputation and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say highly recommend, but there's some common ones. So some of the common ones, their rates are kind of high, but and we have them here in our portal. Have you looked back here in the
Yeah, I think
portal?
I remember seeing something about surety company or something like that. Or
Yeah. So Lance Surety and JW Surety bonds, those are the two common ones, but their rates are kind of, iffy. But let's go here. Broker services. And International Sureties is a bond company called International Sureties. The lady's name is Jessica Palmieri. I'm pasting that in the chat. Um,
okay,
and I think someone has dealt with her. LaDonna put a happy face there, and I think she's dealt with International. They have, based off of your personal credit, they have um, bond rates as low as $750 for the year. Okay. Here is their bond application. Open that PDF up. And it even says here, check if you have taken the Exodus Logistics Learning Centers course. That's this freight broker course, right? But their bond application, this is a one-page simple application, right? And they ask, your legal name, what is your legal structure? Are you a sole ownership, partnership, corporation, LLC? Most of you guys are LLC. What's your business address, phone, and fax? Your email, country or state of corporation, state of incorporation, right? Type of bond, FMCSA, IRS number, which is your EIN, your MC or FF number. FF stands for freight forwarder. You guys are not freight forwarders. You're brokers, right? So you're going to have an MC number, not an FF number. Okay. Terms is the continuous amount, effective date. Has application for this bond been declined by another company? Yes or no? Of course, if this is your first time, then that would be no, right? If prior surety Give the name and reason for change. If this is your first time again, then you would just say NA, non-applicable, right? And then answer these questions. Has the business or any other principal involved in the business had any lawsuits or judgments against them? Well, this is your first time, so no. Ever filed in business or declared bankruptcy? No. We could honestly answer if it's your first time. Ever been convicted of a felony? Yes or no? Felony convictions does not exclude you from bond approval, just so people know, right? Have ever had their licenses suspended, revoked, or denied? Broker license, they're saying. No, your first time, right? Ever been a party to a surety bond claim? Well, if this is your first time being a broker, you have not had an opportunity to have be party to a claim because you've never done anything wrong to anyone to file a claim against you, right? So obviously, no, right? And then you would move down to the other, you know, information of all owners, who's all owning ownership of the brokerage. There's three boxes for there. You may have it just may be you, so you may just want to fill out the first one. But if you got partners in your brokerage and things like that, then they give you enough space for three. If there's more, you can put it on the back or add an extra piece of paper. So that's the simple process. And then you'll have a conversation with Jessica Palmieri at Surety, International Sureties, and see what, based off of your credit level, the better your credit, the lower your premium. So um, if your credit is like 700 or above, maybe close to 800, then you may get $1,000 annual quote, or maybe get a $900 annual quote. So that's a bond company right there. Another one, Propeller. Another one, Surety Bonds Direct. So these are all bond companies. I mean, I've had conversations with Jessica, so I have not had conversations with Surety Bonds Direct or Propeller, but they have come highly recommended to me. That's why they're there in the back office. But yes,
That fee has to be paid. That's a one time fee, right? Well, I know it's annually, but
that's a one-time annual fee. Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah, so you pay it one time and it covers you for the whole year for that $75,000. Whatever that number is. This is just the lowest that they offer, 750 a year, which is pretty good for $75,000, right? But even 1,000, 1,200 to have a 75, I would pay that. I wouldn't be angry, right? If it gets
No,
it gets close to like 2,000 or something like that, you're like, okay, well, even 2,000, you think, okay, I'm paying $2,000 to have a $75,000 coverage. What is that if you divide the 2,000 by 12? What is that monthly? You don't pay it monthly. I'm just curious to see what that is. $166 a month. So even if you were to pay it monthly, which you don't, you got to pay it all up front. But it was still pretty cheap. $166 a month for 12 months to have a $75,000 bond coverage to help cover your carriers in case of your uh, wrongdoing as a broker, right? So,
hmm. Does that experience level does that factor into when they quote you a rate, or is just straight credit based? Because I know some people may say, well, you brand new, they may want to kind of hold that against you. So, that's why I was asking where it says 3 years experience.
right, yes, we will see. That's a good question. I would ask that 3 years experience. If you have to have at least 3 years experience before if you were to consider getting a bond with them, that would imply that you would have to be brokering for 3 years and things like that. So that would be a question you would ask them just to see what they say. Personal credit worthiness, they run your personal credit. They'll do what's called a soft inquiry, right? And all these other things. You could have a cosigner. I wouldn't recommend it because that would put the onus on the cosigner in case you defect, right? Or you breach. And it falls on the coast. It's like a cosigner on a loan or auto loan or a car or a house or whatever, right? So um surety companies have 30 days to resolve claims. Okay, so these are some of the things. Yeah, I would send her an email or an email or call her, right? And
Okay.
say, hey, this is such and such. I'm with the Exodus Freight Broker one-on-one training. I had some questions. I was considering a bond company. I'm just filing for my broker license. I'm researching bond companies and yours was recommended. Can we have a conversation so I can better understand what your services are and whether or not I qualify? And then go from there. And Jessica's pretty friendly. You know, so down to earth young lady. So,
Okay.
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 So the in the broker shipper packet, the first document is the broker shipper agreement, which is the contract between you and the um customer, the shipper, right? Second, you can opt now this is optional, the company profile, because all it is just a one-page document of you identifying some common things about you, your name, company, your phone number, your fax number, your corporate address, your MC number, and DOT in most cases, and your federal ID, which is your EIN number. Um, Contact information, who mainly is going to be you, the general manager or the CEO, and then any emergency contacts. You may have someone that you in case something happens to you that you want the number, like a spouse or a close friend, right? So now the next one is an important one. Number three is your broker authority or your broker license, right? So remember, we're going for our broker or we've already got our broker license and we're going after the customers, but we got to create a shipping packet to send to them. So if I'm a customer and I'm talking to you as a broker and we have a great conversation, and then I say, hey man, send me your packet. I'm gonna consider you as a broker for me, as someone who arranges for the transportation. I'm the shipper. I'm gonna consider you for arranging the transportation. And then so you're gonna send them this. So the broker authority or the broker license, something that you just got because you met all the qualifiers to have a broker license. You did everything that was required to get a broker license or a broker authority. So now you add that to your shipper packet to send the minimum documents. And then if you have a certificate of insurance, a W-9, and credit application. If you are a broker and you're working with a factoring company, then you would need to submit the factoring company's credit application to the shipper to check their paydex score or rate the shipper to see if they're favorable for factoring. And because some shippers don't pay, right? So, or their net terms are too long. In other words, I should say it like that. And then also the notice of assignment. The notice of assignment says to the shipper that, hey, you have a factoring company. They identify themselves in the notice of assignment saying, hey, we are the factoring company. We're working with this brokerage, the brokerage that's trying to get your business, right? So all invoices that are payable to the brokerage are now payable to us, the factoring company, because we've stepped in and are handling their financial piece, of monies being collected because we've already advanced them enough monies to keep the carriers running and paying them. And we're going to recoup that money from you, shipper, through this notice of assignment, right? And that's assuming that the shipper was favorable when they did the credit check on the credit application. If the credit application comes back and says that the shipper is not favorable for credit, then the factoring company will let you, the broker, know their client, hey, this may not be a good idea to go with this shipper because they have a history of not doing bad or doing bad business, not paying on time, or there's some issues with this customer. So the factoring company is actually looking out for the brokers, in this case, best interest. So so those are the minimal um, documents that should be inserted into the broker shipper packet. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you need to have a in that packet? Because you didn't see it in here. Do you need to have a bond in there? Copy of the bond?
Yes.
Why?
Well, you got to get a bond anyway before you have a that's part of the process of getting your broker license. So all of that should be included.
So you're saying so even Haven said yes. So you're saying in your broker shipper packet, you should put a copy of your bond in there. That
I
who
was
I'm not tricking you. I'm just I am tricking you, but I'm just asking.
I would think so. Well, I
So
don't know.
it's a trick question, and So Haven, look, Haven's, I'm confusing Haven now. So Haven, unmute yourself. You said yes first, and then you said no. So what's the issue? Where's Haven at? Can she unmute it? Can you unmute yourself, Haven? Sky says no.
No, because you put your broker authority and all that in the paperwork that you send them, correct?
Correct. So the answer is no. And the reason being is if you have an active broker license, right? Your broker authority, your broker license, you don't need to put a copy of your bond in there because the license implies that you have a bond because you couldn't have had a license without having a bond, right? Part of having a broker license or a broker authority means that you had to have filled out the application, OP1 form, right? Paid the $300, got a bond and got approved for a bond because these things are filed with to the FMCSA and approved by the FMCSA prior to you receiving a broker license, which is this, the broker authority. And so the application, the OP1 form, the bond application and getting clear with that, either the BMC 84 or the BMC 85. The BMC 84 is the surety bond, right? Or the BMC 85 is the trust fund. Those are the two different bond types, one or the other, not both. Most people go with the surety because it's credit based. The trust is asset based. Most of us coming in don't have $75,000 asset based money sitting around. So we go to credit. We leverage our personal credit as a way to get the bond, and we use the BMC 84 to do so. Okay. The bond company files the BMC 84 to FMCSA saying, hey, this client, this potential person has met the bond requirement to have a surety bond. And the FMCSA receives that BMC 84 form and says, okay, check, correct. So they met that bond requirement. So next, the BOC3, right? Which is the agent of process, the process server. That's another requirement to get an active authority, right? And then the UCR, the Unified Carrier Registration. So all of these prerequisites prior to receiving a broker authority or a broker license have to be filed and met to the FMCSA, which is the governing body that gives the license, right? So once you get the license, again, right, it implies that you've done all these other things in order to get the license. So to answer the question, no, you would not need to include your bond copy of your BMC 84 in your broker shipper packet if you already have in your broker shipper packet a copy of your license because it implies you've done everything else. You don't need to have, it's like doing double work. It's a double work. You put in your license in there and a copy of your bond. Well, wait, if you have a license, that means you have a bond, right? So you wouldn't need to put that. That's like, it's redundant. That's the word I'm looking for. It would be redundant, right? Unnecessary. Now, do some people do it? Of course they do, right? But they don't need to. But some of them don't understand why they shouldn't, right? Even though it's unnecessary. Because again, the license implies you have met all the qualifiers to have the license. You see? You understand, guys? You get that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't mean to trick you, but it was a trick question. But so, right, just like being a cosmetologist means you are licensed versus just being a hairdresser. Good analogy. Okay. So, so then I wouldn't need to put my bond in there. I wouldn't need to put my BOC3 filing or my UCR filing or a copy thereof, right? So in the packet, the broker shipper packet on that side, we haven't gotten to the carrier side yet, but the broker shipper packet, okay? And then the certificate of insurance, this is extra insurance coverage because the bond is the 75,000. That's the insurance for the carrier. That covers the carrier, right? Which is the mainly who you're going to be dealing with. But the extra coverage, the certificate of insurance that you may get, if you have the budget to do so, Um, Errors and omissions, which is called E&O, or CCI, contingent cargo insurance. What are those, right? Errors and omissions. Some new brokers make mistakes. They commit errors or they omit things from documentation and paperwork. It happens. No one's perfect. But the beauty of that is there is insurance coverage such that's called errors and omissions. And you can get coverage to a certain dollar value to help you in cases of mistakes. You may neglect as a broker to tell a carrier, a flatbed carrier, that the load needed to be tarped before it gets before it leaves the shipper and gets delivered to the receiver. And you didn't put that on the rate confirmation prior to booking the load with that carrier. Carrier gets to the shipping location to pick up the shipment, loads the truck, straps and secures the load on the flatbed, but does not tarp it, right? Transports it to the receiver for delivery. Guess what? The receiver has every right to reject it because the contract, the customer, the receiver says to the client, which is the shipper, we wanted our shipment to be tarped when it comes to our location. This shipment wasn't tarped. We're going to reject it. We don't know how good the product is, right? So they can reject it and then file a claim or just reject it and not pay the customer. Okay. So who do you think they're going to come after? If the shipper instructed you, the broker, in the broker shipper agreement in the contract of all the requirements of moving that shipment, and one of those requirements was that shipment's commodity should be tarped, and you ignored that and you put on the rate confirmation, or you did not, you neglected to put on the rate confirmation when you gave it to the carrier don't know any difference. The carrier is just doing what they're told, right? In this case, so it's not the fault of the carrier. Who do you think it's the fault of? It's the fault of the broker in that scenario, right? Now, if the broker told the carrier that the load should be tarped and they neglected to tarp it, then that's the fault of the carrier. And that claim will be the receiver will still reject the load, but the claim will be filed against the insurance of the carrier as opposed of the bond of the broker. You see, so where does blame lie determines how that works. But for a broker to have, if they have it in their budget, to have errors and omissions coverage, it protects them when they make mistakes. And they didn't have the intent to make the mistake. They just forgot to do it, right? They may have ignored it or just simply forgot to tell a carrier in that transportation of that shipment that it should have been tarped, and they just overlooked. That's the word I'm looking for. They overlooked it. Okay, and something happened. So errors and omissions. That's the first supplemental coverage that a broker can get. The second one is contingent cargo, CCI. CCI, contingent cargo, you could be up to like 250,000, sometimes more, up to 250,000 coverage. It's contingent on top of your carrier's already cargo coverage, whatever that amount is. The minimum amount for the carriers to carry cargo coverage insurance, the minimum is 100,000. Most brokers, as particularly new brokers, usually list themselves as a certificate holder on the carrier's insurance. Okay, a certificate holder on the carrier's insurance, on the certificate insurance. So down here in box 7, when you are onboarding or getting carriers approved for your brokerage, you say, hey, I want you to list our brokerage as a certificate holder on your insurance, Mr. Carrier. That protects you, the broker, because they're going to go after the carrier's cargo coverage first. And if they exhaust all that amount, the dollar value, whatever's left over, if you have contingent cargo coverage, then they'll come to yours contingent upon the carriers first and to make up the difference. You see? So that's why most new brokers, it's a good idea to have your carriers when you are onboarding with them to list your brokerage as a certificate holder on their insurance, okay, to cover yourself, right? But contingent cargo in addition to the carriers listing you as the broker on their insurance, contingent cargo is just an extra layer of protection. Okay, just an extra layer, right, to help you, the broker, right, especially you new brokers, was very, very helpful. Okay, so those are the two types of extra insurance coverages that can be utilized for a broker, right? And then finally, a W-9 just has an EIN number for your company saying that you are a business, the broker. Okay. So any questions there?
Yeah, Charles, when you said that the broker can request that the carrier list them as a certificate holder on the insurance part of it, that's just while they are transporting that particular cargo, right? Or is that ongoing? Would you?
It can be a combination of both because if you intend on working with this carrier ongoing on different loads and different freight, then you would just have a long-standing relationship with that carrier to be listed as a certificate holder. Because if that carrier is going to be under your brokerage network as an approved carrier long term, then just stay listed as a certificate holder on their insurance. Otherwise, if it's a one-off, then you'll just be taken off after they do that one load, you know.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So it depends
All
on what
right.
the relationship is between you, the broker, and that carrier. Is it going to be long term or is it just going to be a one off? Hopefully, it's going to be long term. If it's a good carrier and they pick up on time, deliver on time, those are the types of carriers you want. So you're going to build a relationship with them. So you would want to stay listed as a certificate holder on their certificate of insurance. That just makes sense, right?
Okay. Okay. So when you're talking about the errors and omission and the continued cargo insurance,
Uh-huh.
um, where do you normally? What's the process of going? That's just like applying for that type of insurance.
You would call a commercial, just like a carrier calls a commercial insurance company to get their insurance coverage, their liability and cargo. You as a broker would call a same commercial insurance company and apply for to see if they, because some of them don't have it, but to see if they have contingent cargo and errors and omissions. Let them know that you are a freight broker and this is the type of coverage you're looking for. You don't need liability because you're not liable for anything. You're not transporting anything. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need general cargo because you're not the principal person carrying the cargo or the commodity. You're the supplemental person who may want some extra coverage contingent up on top of the general person's cargo. So, and you just call the commercial insurance person and have that conversation with them. Let them know what you're looking for. I'm a freight broker. I'm someone who arranges for transportation. I deal with motor carriers. They have cargo coverage. I want contingent cargo coverage on top of their cargo. And also, I want errors and omissions to protect me in case of mistakes when I deal with my clients. And they'll say, okay, I understand. We carry CCI and E&O. They'll talk to you just like that because they know they deal with it. If they deal with it every day, if it's a part of their organization, they would understand what it is, right?
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we're good on the broker, shipper, packet, and what goes in that.
Yes.
All righty. So now that's the first side of your relationship between you. Remember, you're the middleman, you're the broker, you're arranging for transportation. So we have covered the shipper side. We got a broker shipper packet, a broker shipper agreement, all the other necessary minimal documents. Now we want to get we got to have somebody to transport that. We're not doing it. We're not going to throw it on our backs and do it. So we got to get carriers, right, to do it. So now the second part of the relationship. So we're going to swing over here. So now we're dealing with the trucking companies, the owner operators. So the broker carrier packet and its contents, right? Minimal required content. So the first of which, just like with the shipper, the broker shipper agreement, the contract, you have a broker carrier agreement contract. It's the same thing. It's just a contract now between you and the carrier where you line out your terms and responsibilities to that carrier, and they want to see what your job is as a broker to as it relates to them. Same thing. So here's what that looks like. Right? A standard broker. Now, sometimes it's called a setup packet, a broker packet, onboard packet, and the technical term is broker carrier agreement. Again, it aligns up the responsibilities of the carrier, the responsibilities of the broker, what your roles are, no back solicitation, um, payment, all types of things. Make sure when you create yours that you go with a standardized, this is a standardized template of one, and then you can tweak it as you see necessary for your brokerage. It's your brokerage. What's the carrier's responsibility as it relates to their equipment? Equipment to be this many years old, updated, clean, whatever, right? And you can just read in what this equipment responsibility says and kind of piggyback off of it according to your brokerage and see how that works. What's the policy on loss and damage claims? So you see what that says and then see how it relates. You can relate it to your brokerage. How would you want to verbalize that? You don't have to copy this verbatim, but you can kind of understand it. Understand what the Carmack Amendment is. USC Title 49 USC, that's Title 49. Title 49 deals with transportation, 800 and something pages. Okay. Um, well, I'm sorry. Title 49. Yeah, Title 49, transportation. Yeah, 800 something pages. So yeah. And so that's the broker carrier agreement, the contract between you, the broker, and the motor carrier that you're going to be onboarding or approving with for your brokerage. Okay. So that's the first piece in the broker carrier packet. The second piece, just like you did on the shipper side, you had a company profile about you, letting the shipper know, here's a little bit about me, a little bit of information about me. Well, on the broker carrier side, you want to have a carrier profile about the carrier. You, the broker, want to know about the carrier. You want to get a profile on them, who they are, who the driver is, what their equipment type is. This common stuff, right? Basic stuff that you want to get some understanding of. Do they have factoring? Do they have a dispatcher? Who's their factoring company? Who's their driver? Their first and last name, truck and trailer number, cell phone, email, common stuff like that, right? And then as a broker, you would want you want copies of the carrier's qualifying documents or what we call their credentials, right? What makes the carrier a driver, the owner operator, who they are, who they say they are, right? So the first thing is their authority. If you got a carrier who can't give you an operating authority, a motor carrier authority, a common authority of property except household goods, then you should not work with them. Matter of fact, you can't work with them. You cannot put your customer's freight on a driver's trailer who does not have an authority to transport it. That makes sense? So if they can't provide you their authority to engage in transportation as a common carrier of property except household goods by motor vehicle in interstate or foreign commerce, you should not work with them, right? You will do yourself and your customer a disservice if you attempt to put your customer's freight, on a trucking company's trailer who does not have authorization to transport it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Please, someone tells me if anyone does not understand that, please let me know. I try to be as commonsensical as possible, right? Um, so that's number one. You want them to send you a copy of their authority. That's the first credential that you need when you are onboarding or approving or setting up a carrier under your brokerage. You need their authority. If you can't get an authority from a carrier, they shouldn't be your carrier. You shouldn't have them in your network to transport freight. It's just that simple, right? The second one is you need a copy, just like on your side with the shipper, you would need a copy of the carrier's certificate of insurance and them carrying two types on the policy, liability and cargo. So the general liability should be at least $1 million, right? Some people say if you have 750,000, that's fine, but $1 million is most brokers are requiring $1 million. 750,000 is the minimum requirement for a commercial insurance company to carry liability, but most brokers are starting to require $1 million. So why not just make that your requirement also as a broker? This just makes things so much easier, right? So, um, so, and the purpose of the insurance is because that carrier needs to have the proper insurance coverage to cover, from an insurance perspective, what they are authorized to transport with the authority, right? I have an authority, I'm authorized to transport it. Now I need to cover it from an insurance perspective, what I'm transporting. Does that make sense? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So on their policy, it should have the policy number, the effective date that it began, and the expiration date for liability and cargo. Liability, when they get a liability carrier, when most carriers get a liability, that is uh, BIPD, and that's BMC 91, right? That's the form that gets filed by the insurance company, letting the FMCSA know that they have insurance coverage, form BMC 91 or BMC 91X, right? Which is BIPD. Those are acronyms. The BI stands for bodily injury. PD stands for property damage. That's what liability is. It's either to avoid liability or property. You're doing something that's going to create liability or you're going to damage some type of property. That's what liability encompasses. Okay. So policy number goes here in this box. The type of it is general liability, the expiration or the effective date when it became active, and when it expires, right? And then the dollar amounts. Again, most cases for liability is $1 million. And then the same thing with cargo, right? Cargo is the form BMC 34, right? So cargo, it'll be, most cases they'll carry the minimum, which is 100,000 in cargo. Same thing, policy number, effective date when it became active, the policy, and then when it expires, and the dollar value over here somewhere, right? So BMC 91 or 91X for liability, BMC 34 for cargo. That you need to make sure when you are vetting and approving and onboarding and setting up these carriers for your brokerage that they have the proper insurance coverage and that's why they have the authority, the active authority. And then next, the W-9. Just like you have a W-9 when you showed the shipper that you were in a live business with an EIN number, so too should the carrier show you, the broker, that they are a company with an EIN number attached to their company, ABC Trucking, right? EIN number 8522899126 or whatever, right? So they've sent a copy of that to you. So you're taking these documents and saving them and keeping them and vetting them and improving the carrier, right? So these are the minimum documents. And another one, well, the same thing you did with the credit application process with your factoring company for the shipper, the carrier is going to do with their factoring company with you, the broker. Credit application, the carrier's credit application is going to vet you, the broker, just like your factoring company's credit application vetted the shipper for you, the broker. So it just flips. The roles are reversed, if you will, right? So now I need a notice of assignment. The carrier's notice of assignment from the carrier's factory company is going to tell you, the broker, hey, our client, which is this carrier, which you're trying to approve and vet and get on board to your brokerage, is a client of us. And all invoices that are payable to them from jobs that you've sent them and they've done for you are now payable to us because we, the factory company, has advanced the carrier some upfront money and we're waiting on the broker's net terms to pay. So we have enough cash flow to afford to wait that time. That's why we decided to advance them the money. And we're going to get the money from you when your net terms come up. And then we're going to give the rest of the money to the carrier minus our percentage. Right. And that's how we perform as a factoring company. We are a financial institution. We provide those types of services. It's called transportation invoice factoring. Okay. That is the process. I know I said I ended at 7 o'clock, but it's 7:04, which is fine. It's not a big deal. I had to end early tonight, uh but so on the carrier side, are there any questions about what you should expect from the broker carrier packet and the documents you should expect to receive copies of, and you should say this in your packet that you are expected, hey, Mr. Carrier, in order for us to properly vet you and approve you, we need copies of your authority, certificate of insurance. You say COI, and you say your copies of your MC, COI, W-9, and if you have any factory credentials, send those to us as well. Notice NOA and credit app, and they'll understand. Most carriers do. If some carriers don't understand, hopefully they're wise enough to ask the questions. What do you mean when you say this? Or what do you mean when you say that? And then you can explain that to them. And then that relationship continues if once they send you the documents. Okay. Any questions there?
No, everything pretty clear, pretty straightforward, Charles.
So I should expect you guys to have your while you are waiting to, I'm not saying I should expect like I'm it's a requirement. I'm just saying with all this information, I should expect you guys to at least begin the process of getting your packets in order, right? Your broker shipper agreement, your broker carrier agreement, your profile on the shipper side for the shipper, your profile of the carrier, and then your documents you need to present to the shipper, which is your authority, if you have contingent or extra insurance coverages like CCI and E&O, of course, your W-9. If you're dealing with factory, have your proper documents to the shipper. And then on the carrier side, your broker carrier agreement, the profile that you need to send, and then you asking the carrier, these here, after this red line right here, you don't have to create these. You have the carrier send you copies of theirs. So you don't have to do any work there. You just these are the documents that you just need to have to understand and know what they should send to you. That's why they're here. You don't have to create these documents on the broker carrier side. They're sending you their copies. On the broker shipper side, you have to produce your copies, right? You have to create your broker shipper agreement, your contract. You have to create your company profile because that's your company. You have to produce your authority once it becomes active. You have a copy of it once it becomes active. So that's not no work there. You got to just make a copy of it. And then if you have the extra insurance, add it. And then you have a W-9, fill that out. And then if you have factoring, you have the proper paperwork there. So it's not hard. You just got to make sure that you understand what goes where, right? And obviously you can go back to this video because I only talked specifically for 1 hour about the packet types. So it's kind of detailed, right? So that'll be very helpful.
Charles, I got a question.
Yes,
When it comes down to the factoring, as far as a credit application, is it standard that most factoring companies operate basically off a net 30, a net 15, or how is that established as
they
far
go
as
up to they go up to net 60. So net 7 a week, net 15 2 weeks, net 30, net 45, and net 60. Those are
oh,
those are the standardized net terms. Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay,
Yeah. So those are the ones that they'll look for. So in the case of a shipper, you can expect shippers' net terms to be longer than yours for the carriers. Shippers' net terms will be longer as it relates to you paying you, the broker, than your net terms, the broker, being long as it relates to you paying the carrier. So in other words, a shipper could take between 30, 45, and 60 because they don't care. They're controlling the money. So they can take 30, 45, 60 days to pay out their net terms. So it's wise for a broker to use invoice factoring so they can get their money up front and let the factoring company worry about all those days, those net terms, and go after the shipper, the customer on the back end. As
okay,
as it relates to the broker, you and the carrier, you may say, "Hey, man, my net terms may be net seven or net 15. That's the most, right? 15 days. Well, even so, um, carriers can't wait 7 days to get paid or 2 weeks, 15 days to get paid. So if you have a factoring company, they'll step in and do the same thing as they did for you on the shipper side for the carrier as it relates to you, the broker. They'll still pay upfront and then wait the 7 or the 15 days, your net terms, for you to pay out to them now. and then they'll give the difference that was in reserve back to the carrier minus their percentage. So it goes both ways. It's just that the shipper's net terms are way longer than your net terms as a broker.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering about that. Whether there was really a cap on that as far as the number of days, the time frame
Right.
on the money being dispersed. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, what net terms means is how long does the entity or the company wait to pay out what they want to pay out. Like with shippers, it's their money, so they can control however long they want. If you agree to that, then when you sign the contract, you agree to that. So you just got to wait those terms if you don't have factoring, which wouldn't be wise because you're not going to have carriers very long because they're not going to accept moving a load for you and then having to wait 45 days to get paid for it. They want some upfront money, some kind of contingency. I mean, if you
Hmm.
were a carrier, would you not want?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a long time.
Right,
Wait to get
correct. So
paid.
put
Yeah.
yourself, it's always good to better understand something scenarios if you put yourself in the opposite person's perspective, right? Or situation. So if you were a carrier and you were transporting for you, the broker, how long would you wait to get your money? Would you want a quick pay, like 24 to 48 hours after delivery and turn it into the paperwork? Or would you want to wait 7, 15, 30, 45, or 60 days? That's an easy question to answer. I want my
Oh
money
yeah.
now because I got to buy fuel to go to my next load. I got to pay my tires off. I got to pay my truck payment, my trailer payment. Who knows the situation that the carrier is going through? So for them to get their money up front would be ideal, right?
Hmm.
So yeah. So just put yourself in that person's scenario. Just like, and then you with the broker. If you're dealing with a shipper, you can't afford as a broker to wait net 45 and net 60 days. You got to pay these carriers that just move your shipper's load. So you got to have a factory company kind of, unless you got some extra cash flow laying around, right? Then that can be feasible for you, right? Or a line
Hmm.
of credit, an irrevocable line of credit or something like that, an ILOC, but most new brokers don't even know what that is. So you got to just, go with the standardized processes, and that's dealing with factoring.
Hmm. Okay.
It's
Okay.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It all reverts back to the money.
Of course, it's never, and that's never going to change.
Yeah.
That's what's
Hmm.
driving the industry. But now, again, we have a little leverage now, maybe with this with these congestions and freight constraints and backlogs of containers trying to get to their destinations. Again, that may raise the rates. That may cause the shippers to pay more to get these containers delivered, and the brokers directly paying more to the carriers to move the loads. So sometimes strikes can be a blessing in disguise if you look at it. Now, not too long strikes because it gets crazy then, but strikes nonetheless can be a blessing in disguise from a brokering and maybe indirectly from a carrier's perspective because it can drive the rates in the positive direction. And the
Hmm.
so yeah. All right.
All right. All right.
Okay, guys. Any questions?
No, I'm good, Charles.
Anyone else? All right, you brokers got it all together. Okay. You're welcome for the very informative session. You're welcome. I just wanted to, so that's what I probably do. I probably start doing it like an hour session, maybe hour, 15 minutes, and just get very concise on a particular one specific subject matter instead of spending 2 hours on more broad subject matters, right? It's probably more good to get more specific in a shorter period of time than ambiguous in a longer period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that way it gets very, I don't want to get too meticulous, but I rather be very specific to the point on a certain subject matter, and then that'll be more videos on very specific topics, and to make the learning process a little bit better, right? So
Hmm.
so I'll take a poll with that, but I'm thinking that that'll probably be the best way to go because I think it's more effective to the learning process as from an instructor standpoint. Just talk very specifically for a shorter period of time about a very specific subject matter. Like right now, I'm going to call this video uh, broker packets or the packet types, shippers, and that's all we talked about, the packet types, and we got very detailed about it. and broke everything down in a very detailed manner that everyone understood. And I always ask, does this make sense? Does that make sense? Right? Just so everybody, that way, if anyone had a question, you would ask it. Obviously, I welcome questions and we can answer them. Right? So that's the beauty of it. And I love that. So, because it helps you guys. So, okay, guys, I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Charles.
No problem. Let's see, this is Friday, so our next one will be 2 weeks out. Let's go to the main menu, look at the calendar. Uh, Zoom calendar. It'll be the 22nd, that Tuesday, the 22nd of October, and then that Friday, the 25th. That's the fourth week, every second and fourth week. So the fourth week, Tuesday, and the fourth week, Friday is the 22nd and the 20th. And of course, you're going to get emails and posts in the social media, just the same way we do all the time. So I have it out there for you. All right.
All right. All right.
I'll be monitoring the port situation. Now I'll be posting articles to keep. I like to keep everybody updated. I keep track of all the publications to keep you guys updated and things like that. Okay.
All right.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there.
You too, Charles. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right.